Hello, everyone. It says live now. I think I am live. Hello, Donna Bishop. Thank you very much for the invitation to do this event for CAFA. This is a time in which everyone, regardless of what you do for a living, has enormous and sometimes terrifying questions about what is going to happen to them financially and what is going to happen in the future. So I am very glad to be a part of this event today. I am the money columnist for CBC Radio for the North American syndicated show Cityline. I have a show on Sirius XM. I wrote a book called Moolah La, Why Smart People Do Dumb Things with Their Money and What You Can Do About It. So this is my world. I focus on personal finance all day, every day. It's what I love. And I think there is a big opportunity for everybody, including those who work in the fashion industry as designers and photographers and talent, to just ground themselves and think about what they need to do in order to get a handle and keep a handle on their finances at this time. So I do a lot of these kinds of events, but never have I been so concerned about making sure that my shot was relatively well art directed, and I'm wearing, a pressed shirt, and I've got a little bit of powder on, because this is the fashion industry. I better have my stuff together. So I have a bunch of questions that have been sent in advance. I'm going to get to them, as well any other questions that you have that you want to ask me. I think the functionality, I'm just going to put on my glasses and look. Yeah, you can write a comment. There's Anna. So I assume you just write the comments in there, and then I will take a closer look at them. An event that I am doing this afternoon at 2 o'clock this afternoon is with the Board of Trade. And I bring it up because I had no idea how many different programs there were that were focused on businesses large and small. So we can talk more about these details, but I want to assure you that it isn't just the federal government that is making moves on things like the CERB and the wage subsidy. There are also programs happening at the provincial level and the municipal level. So for example, the city of Toronto, just by way of example, is offering different deferrals and payment plans on water bills and hydro bills and property taxes. So there's lots of things happening, and you just need to look at the area in which you live and find the programs that apply where you live and the kind of business that you are in. So the first question that I received that I think is super relevant is, how can I turn this into a positive for my business? Could I apply for the no interest $40,000 loan and use it to grow my company, or perhaps use the 75% wage subsidy to hire new staff to work remotely? Great question. Worries me a little bit. And it worries me a little bit in that the intention of these programs are to avoid people from being laid off. So yes, this could be an opportunity for you. And yes, we want to think creatively, especially in this industry, you're used to it. My concern, a little bit of a concern, is that it sounded like it might be a pursuit of benefits to focus on growth instead of a pursuit of benefits to preserve jobs. So one of the things we've been hearing out of the banks, which sounds ridiculous but has been happening, is wealthy people with great credit scores calling their financial institutions and asking for mortgage deferrals. And that's just not why these programs were set up. So I think it is important for us to make sure that these programs are there and that they deliver on people who need them. So yes, glass is half full. There are some opportunities there, but I wouldn't focus on that so much as use the programs that are super important and relevant to you. Number two, and this is the question that I have been asked more than any other, is what's the best way to avoid going into debt at this time? And geez, I can tell you the process isn't magic. Executing the process can be very, very difficult. So here's the process. First is come up with an emergency budget. And we talk about budgeting all the time, blah, 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 blah. This is kind of a different time. Understatement of the year. First off, look at the expenses that you have that you absolutely must pay. So first is a roof over your head. That could be a mortgage. That could be rent, food expenses, insurance, Telecom right now, I mean, you would have thought, oh, my telecom is maybe a luxury. In this day and age, you can't actually do anything if you don't have broadband and the ability to, not literally, but it's very difficult to do anything without broadband. So in your emergency budget, it is mortgage or rent, food, insurance, telecom, medication if it's not covered. These are all the basics. The second thing you do is look at your income. And for most entrepreneurs, it has been hit. For small business owners with a retail presence, it has evaporated. So it may be that there's no income that you can hope for from your business. And so it's things like, where could I access a line of credit? What room is available to me on my credit card? What does my spouse earn if we were to combine our finances? So you get a sense for what's going out, what's coming in, and what the gap is. And then the gap, and you want to look like, 3 to 6 months out, the gap becomes the problem that you need to solve. And so then you're brainstorming. So what else can you do to cut expenses? What are the recurring expenses that if you've got kids, maybe you're pausing tutoring, I don't know what those things would be. And you have to take anything that I say with a grain of salt, because one of the reasons we're keeping our tutor employed for our child is he's a kid of his own. So if I can keep that work going remotely, that makes sense for our daughter, but it also makes sense for the service providers around us in that particular case. So you're brainstorming what you can cut down additionally, and then on the income side, what do you have access to? So for those of you with employees, the wage subsidy is going to be a very real and very important thing for you to look at. 75% of your payroll, there's a bunch of criteria, there's a bunch of things you need to know to make it work, but if your revenue has dropped more than 30%, that is going to be something that you want to seriously look into. The idea is that you don't lay off your employees. And in some cases that makes total sense. You keep your employees even though your business has declined. In other cases, you're actually better off for the business to lay off your employees, as devastating as that is, and believe that the Canada Emergency Response benefit will cover them to at least keep the roof over their head. So you're going to brainstorm. Could I ask for money from family? Could I ... So that's really what the emergency budget is. It's what's going on and what are the ways that I can fill that gap. The question then is, what are the priority calls that you need to make on paying those expenses? So you've heard me talk already about mortgage deferral. If you have a mortgage, one of the things that you can do is call your financial institution, call your lender, and ask for a skip a payment or skip a couple of payments. This does not let you off the hook. At this point, you're still going to be charged the interest, but with interest rates as low as they are, I wouldn't worry that much about that interest rate. Why a payment deferral on a mortgage makes so much sense is it can free up a reasonably big chunk of change for you to then be able to pay off the other bills. So if you didn't have to pay your mortgage for a month, 2 months, 3 months, if you were to skip those payments, it might allow you to pay your credit card off in full, or at least make the minimum payment on your credit card, which I can assure you is a much higher interest rate than it would be if you're paying off your mortgage. That rate is going to inevitably be lower. So that is kind of a segue to this third question, which is, do I defer bills or take out a loan to pay bills within my business? What if I don't have savings to rely on? A lot of people don't have savings to rely on. That's a really valid and relevant reality for many, 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 many people, especially in this world of precarious income, right? Like you're not receiving the same paycheck for most people, not receiving the same paycheck every month. It's like going like that. So I go back to the emergency budget thing because that's where you're going to be able to say, should I defer bills? Which bills should I defer? Mortgage, easier and better and cheaper to defer than credit card payment. And you may find as you work through that you don't have to defer as much as you thought you did. So you're able to pay your hydro and your mortgage, and your water and your telecom based on that revision. Question number 4, small business cash flow is often paying bills that were accrued 30 days ago. So what suggestions do I have for managing this when cash flow disappears? goes back to the emergency budget thing, right? What I will say is the metaphor that I think is really helpful for those of you with people. It's not just as simple as you, turning yourself off. You've got people and broader expenses. Is many of you are putting a business into hibernation. So say you have a retail store and there's literally no foot traffic. You're trying to put that business into hibernation. So how do you limit, reduce, eliminate the cash burn, the expenses that are associated with that business? That really is priority number one. Question 5 is, can I negotiate anything with my credit card company, including the interest rate, which is a very good question. So far, we haven't heard that, not at this point. It may come. Certainly, you want to pick up the phone and call them and say, listen, here's my situation. What can you do for me? At this point, it doesn't look like it's going to be lower interest rates. It looks like it's going to be a payment deferral, or you pay the minimum payment, but you have something logged on your file, something like that. I also think that as governments and banks and institutions figure out what the fastest interventions are and what the most equitable interventions are, the ones that they have pursued out of the gate are faster and more equitable. So that is, replace some of your income under UI, replace some of your income under the CERB, and allow you to defer payment on your mortgage or whatever. So maybe interest rates will come. I am skeptical that will happen. Now, I do want to get to one other question that is an interpersonal one. And in fact, I did a whole segment on CityLine on this very topic. And that is, my partner and I are both super stressed and we are fighting about money. Anybody know anybody who's dealing with this? Yeah, I'd say it's pretty common. Any tips on how to talk about money without killing each other? Don't kill each other. I have a couple of suggestions. And in fact, my thinking here is informed by an author named Leanne Davies. She wrote a book called The Good Fight. And she is of the belief that a certain degree of conflict is really healthy and important within relationships. So I kind of agree. I think that's a good way to think about it. She also uses a credit card analogy to say that you don't want to build up a conflict debt. So you don't want things to fester, and then explode. You want to deal with them like you're paying off your credit card every month. You want to deal with them as they go every single month, every single week, every single day, so they don't fester. And how do you do that? She has a bunch of steps. First is to establish lines of communication, which can be, in some couples, it's super easy. Hey, time out. Let's talk about money. I'm getting stressed about it. And in other couples, it is very complicated and a nuanced art to try and get the attention focused on something that really matters and that could be contentious like that. So number one, establish lines of communication. Second is to create a connection. And this is couple by couple by couple. For some couples, it's a shoulder massage, it's a hand, it's half hour watching your favorite Netflix show, it's bringing someone a coffee just the way they like it. So doing the work to rebuild the bridges that may have been if not completely exploded by all that we have been through, then at least there are potholes in those bridges, and establishing a connection can be really, really important. It is so critical that you remember that you are allies, not adversaries, in addressing the financial questions. And that can be hard, especially because financial issues in times of crisis typically exacerbate pre-existing challenges, right? So, it's not like every couple is rocking it on the financial front and then this crisis hits. Most people are dealing with something, and there's something in the relationship dynamic that's not completely sorted out. And the pandemic has made that a holy heck of a lot worse, not just on money, but you're under the same roof 24/7, and that can be less than ideal conditions. Third step is to contribute to a solution. So if we're talking about the emergency budget, both parts of the couple would look at that and say, oh, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And it is brainstorming, which for some people is easier than others, because a lot of people, when they brainstorm, they think that, the ideas that they table are the ones that have to be pursued, instead of just throwing it out there. Here are some ideas. So adhere to the basic brainstorming rules of, more quantity, the better. No rejecting ideas out of hand. No yeah buts. You're just putting a whole bunch of ideas on the table. And then the fourth step is to align on values. And if you're a relatively healthy, functioning couple, that shouldn't be that hard. If you've been together, you just have to kind of remind each other what's important, what do we agree on, where do we see eye to eye, and where can we take this based on our shared values. Then the last step is to kind of determine the plan. So you're going to set expectations, you're going to come up with a plan, you're going to do some stuff, and proceed from there. It's not going to be easy. I'm doing an event later this week on happiness in times of crisis, and the Morneau Chappelle expert said the first thing we need to realize is that this situation is fraught. It is going to be really, really hard for people who have pre-existing challenges, but also for people who kind of were good and suddenly they're not, for a whole bunch of different reasons. So those are some thoughts on the couple front. Oh, I see some commentary here. I will ask this next question from one of our participants, and that is, should I continue to contribute to my RRSP? So this is assuming that you were contributing before the pandemic, which a lot of Canadians were not, but let's say you were. It depends on a couple things. Are you still employed and drawing income that you can count on for the foreseeable future? Or do you need to be pausing on those contributions in order to build up a more substantial cash cushion should things get even worse for you? And number two, does the RRSP contribution need to go into the markets at this point? And those are connected, but they are distinct. So an RRSP, it's a container. You can put stuff in there. You can have cash in there. You can have stocks in there. You can have mutual funds in there. So you could still contribute to your RRSP in order to minimize your taxes in the coming tax year, but you don't necessarily have to put the money into the market. That's still up to you. But it segues to one of the questions that I got here, and that is, should I be investing right now? I hear when the market is low, it is a good time to buy stocks. True, but it is a complicated answer. So number one, if you look at a long-term chart of the stock market over long periods of time, I'm talking decades, here's what you see. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. But where we were in 1920 and where we are in 2020 is higher than we were back then. So if you follow that logic and share the belief that I have that the stock market will move up over time, you might consider continuing to invest. The thing to note is things could get way worse on the market. We have no way of knowing. So if you do continue to make, and I'd make small lump sums versus, some big bet, because you've seen how choppy the market is. If you continue to make small investments, just be prepared that that will go down, and that the glasses half full version is called dollar cost averaging. So you bought a stock or a mutual fund at this level, then it dropped even further. You bought some more, then it dropped even further, then it dropped some more. Heartbreaking to see it drop, but you also got a better price. It's like a bargain price compared to what it was when you bought it over here. So it's a very personal decision. It depends on your overall finances, depends on what's going on in your family. But I think the first priority for all families right now is cash preservation. And if you've got cash preserved and you're good to go, maybe you've got a job in which your salary is secure, it's a government job, or you're a retiree and you've got a pension, then sure, continue to contribute on the RRSP or TFSA for that matter. I'm going to reach down and grab the glasses that I dropped. The next question is, and this is related. I have money to cover rent, but because I don't know what my future income will be, I am nervous to pay on time. Should I pay it or defer? It kind of depends on your time horizon. So again, emergency budget, conversation with, in the case of a mortgage, the lender, in the case of a renter, the landlord, to see what your options are. If you have some options on that front, then I think it's a great idea to deal with the roof over your head cost first, because it's for most people the most expensive, and it may be the one where the rates are the lowest. Okay, so those are a whole bunch of questions. Can I use this situation to better understand my relationship to money? Yes. You can use this situation to better understand your relationship to money. You can use this situation to better understand your relationship to risk. I think, so where I come at from the perspective of relationship to money, we all have a default context for money, basically the setting in which an event occurs. And it's our answer to the question, what is my money for? Most people don't think about that, so they're just subject to the marketing messages that come out, which are money's for retirement, money's for buying stuff, instead of taking the time to breathe and coming up with your own answer of what your money is for. So that's, I think that's a great exercise. The library has online ebook access to my first book, Moolah La, my second book, which is about retirement savings. Yes, definitely do that. The other thoughtful exercise, if you need a break from watching the news and dealing with the crisis stuff, is to get ahead on some tasks. And the two money-related tasks that, if you have the time, if you have the wherewithal, the two tasks would be taxes and shredding. So taxes, as you know, there have been changes to deadlines and changes to payment dates. So if you owe the government, you've got a little bit more time. If the government owes you, I would get those taxes done, get them in, and get that refund to you now, because you're probably going to need it much more now than later. So get on top of your taxes. Because remember, you're filing them for the prior tax year, so nothing that has occurred from January 1st is relevant to that process, unless you made an additional RRSP contribution. But it's mostly what happened, almost exclusively what happened in 2019. The second task to engage on is shredding, and basically going through and getting rid of paper. So for your tax returns, you need to keep not only the tax return, but all supporting documents for 6 years. If you want to be safe, 7, but it's 6. Generally speaking, it's 6. And so those are receipts and all the stuff that would have supported the tax filing that you did. If you've got tax returns that are older than that, then you can turf them. Now, you know what I do? I keep the first 2 pages of the notice of assessment. And the reason I do that is I just find it interesting to look back. I still have them from when I was like in university 100 years ago. I was like, oh my God, I lived on, I don't know, $4,000 or whatever the number was. I just find it interesting. It's a curious little bit of archival information, but not required. Secondly is bank statements. So I would keep a paper copy. You probably don't need to keep them more than a year. I tend to keep 2 years. But other than that, you don't need them. So those can go into the shredder. I say shredder because if you put this out with your recycling, you were just setting yourself up for the potential for a whole basket of trouble. So you can shred at home. You can put them in a big plastic garbage bag and wait until retailers reopen and take them in and have them shredded professionally. Things like insurance. You'll get a new insurance document every single year. For your car, it's probably going to have a little pink slip to go in your glove box. For your home insurance, you're going to want to keep a copy of that policy. Once you've got the one from the current year, you don't need to have all that paper from the past. So I find it quite satisfying. What does that say about me? To go through and pull the paper out, shred it, and just get rid of it, because you don't need to have that sort of stuff around. So I think that is a virtuous task that you can put on your accomplishment list, that you're so amazing that you got your taxes filed and you whittled down your inbox from 3 feet high to 1 foot high or something like that. All right, let me see. So I am just looking here at any other questions. So for those of you who are listening, if you want to know where I got that beautiful blue thing, I could explain that to you. Any other questions you have about your money? We have talked about, oh, I'll say one other thing. I will say one other thing that is both morbid and super duper practical, and that is do your will. Do your will and talk to your parents about their wills. Now, this is something that I talk about I've been talking about this for a decade. Do you know the statistic on how many Canadians do not have a will? Grown-ups who do not have a will. 50%. 50% of adult Canadians do not have a will. And if you look at the statistics, that means a lot of parents with children do not have a will. So on the one hand, super morbid. Bruce, are you implying, that I'm going to fall victim to the pandemic? No, but people will. And so let's use that as an opportunity to get your will done. You can do that through a traditional estate lawyer. It's probably about $1,000 to do that. And, I don't know how busy they are these days. You can also do it online. It's not the same. It's not as customized as it would be if you used a lawyer. But if you want to get something done that's cheap and cheerful, the two sites that I have some perspective on, I haven't used them myself, but I know that they exist and I've talked to their founders, a site called Willful and a site called legalwills.ca. Now, the other part of that is there is so much concern about our seniors because statistically they have a higher risk of succumbing to to COVID-19. So I am lucky that I can have this conversation with my parents in a way that doesn't sound weird. Many of you don't, and it's super weird, so you wouldn't even consider it. But if you haven't, I would ensure that you at least consider asking your parents if their affairs are in order. And, again, I'm lucky. I can do that without my mom, and I would cackle about it. I think it's hilarious. Other families, that would be like dropping a hand grenade at Thanksgiving dinner. But that's relevant because it's not just the will, it's the power of attorney, it's the living will, it's who gets the art, it's where are your passwords. I've done many segments on this topic because there's so many outstanding issues for people to address. Now, I'm going to scroll. Ooh, there's a scroll. Okay. I've got 2 minutes left. I've got one other question here, and if anybody else has any other, I didn't realize I could scroll. How cool am I? Since I'm working from home in a way I never did before, does that mean I can now write off my home on my taxes? Such a great question. If your home fits in with the criteria of home office, and there's a bunch that you'll search, yeah. It would not be until the next tax year, right? So you'll want to look at that, but I think that's a great question. And so it's a certain percentage of your total space. How do you calculate that? It's not just the share of your rent that could go on your taxes. It is also a share of utilities and Wi-Fi. Like telecom, cell phone, that kind of stuff. So I think that's a great question. And if you haven't been doing that, that should be something that you should certainly consider for the next year. Okay, I'm just going to see if there's any other questions on here that I should make 100% I get to. I think we're pretty good. Here is my call to action. My call to action for CAFA attendees is this. There are real and present dangers for individuals and for businesses. There are imagined dangers for individuals and for businesses. Do your best to distinguish between the two because it is very, very easy to get caught up in that all the noise and start trying to problem solve or brood or worry about things that are not relevant to you. So the things that are relevant to you, focus on, get the information, do the plan, do the emergency budget. For the things that aren't relevant to you, park them aside, put them away. don't consider them, because we only have a certain capacity for worry and for logistics without our head blowing off and our head popping off. Let's not let our heads pop off. That's not helpful to anyone. Certainly not to the customers and clients that you serve and the beauty that you create in the world. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for your attendance. It's been a great pleasure to be here, and I thank you so much for the invitation and for the work that you do in this crazy industry. Don't you sometimes wonder why you didn't just decide to become a banker? I do, because it would be boring, and your creative spirits. So keep doing what you're doing. 2 notes in closing. Our next event on Live with CAFA is branding, fashion, and entertainment lawyer Ashley Froese. She is going to talk about navigating Canada's $107 billion economic stimulus package, and it's a massive amount. There are tons and tons of ways in which the government and the private sector are trying to make things easier for business. Be informed and access all of them that you can. If you have any other questions, if you have any questions that you would like answered by Ashley about those economic stimulus programs, the email address is live@cafawards.ca. 1A, only one. So I know it's CAFA, of course it's CAFA, but it is cafawards.ca. Thank you for what you said before the volume declined. I'm sorry that the volume declined. Thank you everyone for joining. Take care of yourselves, take care of your heart, take care of your family, and I hope you still look fabulous dressing up and, making it work. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.